far as the Sue Gray report is concerned. Should we see all of it?
We should see all of it, but I don't think we need Sue Gray to tell us what is absolutely clear to the British people, which is that the Prime Minister has lied and lied and lied again. He's taken us all for fools, treated the British people with complete contempt, and we have this ridiculous spectacle of the Foreign Secretary and a whole litany of senior ministers paraded out every day to come up with ever more ridiculous excuses.
Starmer's number 10 crisis, the sexist briefing scandal. Right, before we dive into this absolute political car crash, smash that subscribe button because UK Connors brings you the unvarnished truth about Westminster's dirty laundry that the mainstream media won't dare touch. Trust me, you'll want notifications on for what's coming next. Keir Starmer thought he'd survived the worst of his leadership woes, didn't he? The man who promised to bring stability and respectability back to Labour after the Corbyn years now finds himself presiding over what can only be described as a toxic, allegedly sexist culture at the very heart of government. And here's the kicker. It's not the Tories saying this. It's his own bloody cabinet ministers. Picture this scene. Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, sitting across from BBC Radio 5's Matt Chorley, about to drop a political bombshell that would make even the most seasoned Westminster watchers choke on their morning coffee. This isn't just any Labour MP having a whinge. This is a woman who was supposedly Starmer's golden girl, his handpicked favourite for Labour deputy leader. Yet there she was, live on air, essentially calling out Number 10 for running a boys' club operation that would make a 1970s gentleman's establishment blush. Yeah, totally sexist briefings, she said, with a kind of matter-of-fact delivery that suggests this isn't news to her. It's just Tuesday at Westminster. But hang on, let's unpack what's really happening here, because this isn't just about hurt feelings or political point scoring. This is about the fundamental character of Starmer's operation, and whether the man who positioned himself as a grown-up in the room is actually running a government that treats women like second-class citizens. Phillipson's revelation becomes even more extraordinary when you consider the context. She's competing for deputy leader against Lucy Powell, the former leader of the House whom Starmer unceremoniously dumped during his recent reshuffle. Now, reshuffles are brutal affairs at the best of times, but the way this played out reads like a masterclass in political mismanagement. You've got two women essentially pitted against each other for a role, while the very institution they are trying to cite allegedly briefs against them based on their gender. The irony is almost too delicious to believe. Here's Phillipson, branded in newspaper after newspaper as Starmer's chosen one, his number 10 favourite, simultaneously revealing that the same number 10 have been conducting what she describes as sexist briefings against her. It's like being told you're the teacher's pet while the teacher is simultaneously telling everyone you're not clever enough for the class. The cognitive dissonance is staggering, and it reveals something deeply unsettling about how Starmer's inner circle operates. When Chorley pressed her on this contradiction, essentially asking how she could be number 10's favourite while being briefed against by number 10, Phillipson's response was telling. Well, that's what a lot of people have been writing for months, and so others can come to their own conclusions. It's political speak, certainly, but there's a weary resignation in those words that suggests this isn't an isolated incident or misunderstanding. This is systematic. But here's where it gets really interesting, and frankly, rather damning for Starmer personally. Phillipson isn't some backbench rebel with an axe to grind. She's been remarkably loyal, weathering stories about her supposed imminent sacking with stoic professionalism. She's done the rounds, defended government policy, and played the game exactly as a senior minister should. Her reward? Months of allegedly sexist briefings questioning her competence and suitability for roles she's already excelling in. The pattern becomes even more concerning when you remember that Sue Gray, Starmer's former chief of staff, raised similar concerns about the masculine, macho culture at number 10 before her own dramatic departure. Two senior women, both with significant influence and access, both painting the same picture of an organization that talks a good game about equality but practices something rather different behind closed doors. Phillipson's acknowledgement that there's a problem with the culture is diplomatic but devastating. We had lots of new colleagues who were elected last year, lots of brilliant people who haven't believed they have contributed to the team in the manner that they ought to, she said. Translation: talented people are being sidelined, undermined, or simply not given the opportunities they deserve because they don't fit into the established boys' club mentality. This matters beyond the usual Westminster bubble gossip because it goes to the heart of what Labour is supposed to represent. This is a party of equality, of breaking down barriers, of ensuring that talent and merit matter more than who you went to school with or which pub you drink in after work. Yet if Phillipson's account is accurate, Starmer's number 10 is operating like a throwback to the days when women were expected to know their place and stay in their lane. The timing couldn't be worse for Starmer politically. Labour's honeymoon period post-election is well and truly over, with approval ratings sliding and internal tensions becoming increasingly visible. The last thing he needs is his own cabinet ministers publicly questioning the culture and competence of his operation. Yet that's exactly what's happening, and it's not coming from the usual suspects or political opportunists. What makes Phillipson's intervention particularly potent is her obvious reluctance to make it. This isn't someone looking to cause trouble or settle scores. Listen to her carefully, and you hear someone who's tried to work within the system, who's attempted to give the benefit of the doubt, but who's ultimately been pushed to the point where silence would be complicity. I've been underrated the majority of my life. I'll simply keep going and doing what I'm doing, she says. There's steel in those words, but also a profound sadness that in 2024, senior women in government are still having to prove themselves in ways their male colleagues never would. The broader implications for Labour are significant and potentially long-lasting. How can a party effectively champion women's rights and gender equality in the country when its own operation allegedly perpetuates the very attitudes and behaviours it claims to oppose? How can Starmer credibly position himself as a modern, progressive leader when his closest advisors are apparently running briefing campaigns that would have been considered questionable decades ago? The silence from number 10 in response to these allegations is also revealing. No robust defense, no categorical denials, no promise of investigation or reform. Just the usual Westminster non-responses that suggest damage limitation rather than genuine concern about the issues raised. It's precisely the kind of response that feeds into narratives about political establishments protecting themselves rather than addressing legitimate concerns. For Starmer personally, this represents a leadership test of the most fundamental kind. Does he have the courage and integrity to investigate these allegations properly, or will he retreat behind the usual platitudes about respecting all colleagues while doing nothing substantive? His response will tell us everything we need to know about whether his commitment to equality is genuine or merely performative. The deputy leadership contest now takes on a completely different complexion. It's no longer just about policy differences or personal ambition. It's about what kind of culture Labour wants to cultivate and what standards it's prepared to accept from its leadership. Both Phillipson and Powell have now experienced what appears to be systematic undermining from the very organisation they are seeking to serve at the highest level. This scandal also raises serious questions about the media's role in perpetuating these dynamics. If sexist briefings from number 10 are finding their way into newspaper columns and political coverage, then journalists and editors need to examine their own practices. Are they amplifying harmful narratives about women politicians? Are they holding male and female politicians to the same standards? The answers to these questions matter for democracy itself. What we're witnessing isn't just another Westminster drama that will blow over with the next news cycle. This is a fundamental question about power, respect, and equality at the highest levels of British politics. If senior women in government can't speak truth to power without facing systematic briefing campaigns designed to undermine them, then we have a problem that goes far beyond party politics. Starmer came to power promising to restore trust in politics and demonstrate that Labour could govern competently and fairly. Yet if his own operation is mired in the kind of toxic, allegedly discriminatory culture that Phillipson describes, then is failing on his most basic promises. The very qualities that supposedly made him electable, stability, respectability, professional competence, are being called into question by his own ministers. The tragedy is that this was entirely avoidable. Good leadership means creating an environment where talent flourishes regardless of gender, background, or personal connections. It means ensuring that briefing strategies focus on policy and performance rather than personal characteristics or demographics. Most fundamentally, it means recognizing that diversity isn't just morally right, it's strategically essential for effective governance. Instead, we're left with a picture of a number 10 operation that appears to have learned nothing from decades of progress in gender equality and workplace culture. The boys' club mentality that Phillipson describes isn't just outdated, it's actively damaging to effective government and democratic representation. So here we are, with a Prime Minister whose own Education Secretary has essentially accused his operation of institutional sexism, whose former Chief of Staff raised similar concerns, and whose response has been silence and spin rather than substance and reform. This isn't the kind of leadership crisis that resolves itself with a few parliamentary statements or media interviews. This requires fundamental change in culture, personnel, and approach. The British public deserves better than a government that talks about equality while allegedly practicing discrimination. Women politicians deserve better than having to navigate sexist briefing campaigns while trying to serve their constituents. And frankly, Starmer deserves better than advisors who apparently think that undermining half the population is an acceptable political strategy. This story isn't going away, and neither should our scrutiny of how power operates in modern Britain. Subscribe to UK Connors because we'll keep following this scandal wherever it leads, holding our politicians accountable regardless of party affiliation, and ensuring that the truth doesn't get buried under Westminster's culture of spin and deflection. The stakes are too high, and the principles too important, to let this slide into the usual political amnesia that affects so much of what happens in SW1.